Well, we're looking at what it looks like to be the man of the house. Mr. C.R. Wiley, how in the world are you doing, my friend?
I'm well, Caleb. How are you?
Doing great. Well, I got introduced to you through some other guys that I sort of kind of follow, and we become Facebook friends. So I guess we're official now. So
Right, right.
that's it's a big deal. So for those who listen to the podcast, tell them who CR is. And the other reason I like that your name CR, my name's Caleb Reed Gordon, and my aunt has always called me CR. And so, when I saw that, I was like, hey, all right, we can take this. So
Well,
tell them who CR Wiley is and what's your claim to fame, brother?
well, you can call me Chris. The name CR, I'm sorry to disappoint you, was uh, purely the result of doing some Google research, and I discovered that there are about 500,000 people in the world named Chris Wiley, and some of them are kind of creepy, and so I didn't want people to find those folks when they were looking for me. So I thought, well, let me try some things. So I used CR, and it turned out that was pretty much open. And there's like one other author, but I think it's woman, and she doesn't write anything like I do. So anyway, so that was the logic behind it. I don't have any aspirations to be C.S. Lewis or something, but I'm a pastor. I serve a church in the Pacific Northwest. I've done a range of things, and I guess the things that I'm known for today have to do with households, particularly with men and their duties. And I had a previous life or an earlier existence where I was known for more urban ministry stuff, and that was back in the 1990s. And I wrote books that are all out of print, and I'm not all that sad that they are. But the stuff that I've written recently is along that line. I also write fiction. I write short stories and books for kids, stuff like that. But I guess the thing I'm known for is that, I write for World Magazine, and I've written for a number of others, and I'm an editor at senior editor at Touchstone Magazine, and so and I've been a professor of philosophy, did that for about a decade in the Boston area, and I've been a real estate investor. I've owned a lot of properties since the early 90s. And so, and I've also got some background in the trades. I worked my way through my first graduate program as a framer and deck builder.
Oh wow.
And
And you've got
and
your
then
you got you're a jack of all trades, brother. Whew.
yeah, well, I guess so. I mean, the old joke, jack of all trades, master of none. Maybe
Come
maybe
on.
that's right.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that at all, man. So, um, you have it seems like you've got a like I've had Stuart on, and he and I talked about masculinity and the need for a return to biblical masculinity in the church. And
Right.
that was one of the things that I noticed with how you handled some of the things you talked about and some of the things you've been addressing in culture. Tell us about why you think there is a need for the return of masculinity in the church.
Well, I think there are a range of reasons. One of the significant ones is that men and women are different, and
No, really? Are you kidding?
right. And what we as Christians believe is that the meaning and the difference are kind of front loaded. It's not like it's a cultural construct or something like
Right.
something we've made up on our own. It's built into the fabric of creation. And so that means that there's a set of responsibilities and duties that are, we are called to meet and fulfill. And if we don't, then we're not doing our job. I mean, it's just that simple. To me, it's not based on ego needs or psychological, uh, you know, uh, crises that guys are going through, wondering why what makes me important or stuff like that.
Right.
It's more like, okay, there are a bunch of jobs to do, and sometimes the jobs get a lot of attention and praise, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
You think about the garbage man. By the way, did you ever notice that feminists never say garbage person or garbage woman? It's always the garbage man.
Garbage
Well,
man.
that's because there's no status associated with being the garbage man.
Amen.
And
I was one for one. I was a garbage man for 1 year, and I got all kinds of respect for those brothers.
oh yeah, it's hard work, and it's thankless work, but it's necessary work. And
Yeah.
very often, you know, depending on when you live, there are lots of things that need to be done that are thankless, but they need to be done.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of things that men are made to do that only they can do. And in our time, a lot of those things are more or less thankless, but we still need to do them.
Yeah. I thought about this the other day. We have a bridge that connects both sides of our town. And when it was like 12 degrees here in Oklahoma, there were guys out there in, thick overalls
Sure.
working, getting that bridge. And, the women, they're going to cruise over that bridge to go get their lattes, and they're not going to be upset about that.
Yeah,
And
yeah. This is something that my friend Tony Esselin loves to beat on. Tony's writes about men and the importance of masculinity and manhood and stuff like that. And that's one of the things he notes about feminists, but generally elites, broadly speaking, when we're talking about the cultured classes, sort of the people who spend all day in offices and stuff like that. They really don't have any personal connection to the physical world very much,
yeah,
and they take for granted a number of things that really, when they're in trouble, they appreciate the fact that someone can come over and take care of a problem, but they don't give much thought to it otherwise, and they do stupid stuff. Um, since this whole uh, kind of quixotic quest to get women into the trades. That's been going on my entire life.
yeah.
And they get into it initially because of a lot of pressure and
Sure.
perks, and then they wash out in the first 2 years. I mean, it's been happening. I mean, it's awfully hard to be, on the 30th floor as an iron worker and pregnant. It doesn't work. And then,
Or
you got to go home to a baby, and you're just, and men who do physical work, it takes a toll. I mean, it really does, And so I've known guys who, get up into their 50s and 60s, and they've got so many aches and pains and bruises and wounds. They walk around with a limp. It's just it's not a glamorous, way of making a living, but it's a I think one that you can be proud to be
sure.
engaged in. And I'm from Western Pennsylvania, and that's very much blue collar place, and
Yep.
and men in that world took pride in working with their hands. They weren't ashamed of it at all. In fact, they kind of looked down on people who couldn't.
Come on. Oh, man, I'm telling you, we just had a tornado go through
Yeah,
our
I heard.
little
Yeah,
stretch of the world. We made the national news a couple days ago, and
yeah.
my cousin, in fact, I'm wearing his shirt today. He's got a tree removal company. I'm telling you, those
He's got a lot
guys,
of business right now.
oh my word. And I mean, they're hooked up, and
Yeah,
nobody's upset that they're in their front yard chopping up stuff. They're thankful to see them. And when they pull up with all their gear and all their equipment, all their guys, it's like the cavalry just moves in, and they're just like, yeah, everybody, they're in the front yard
yeah,
excited. And that, and the PSO guys, the public service guys that bring the electricity back in, they're stoked out
yeah,
of their minds. And I don't
yeah,
understand why. I mean, I do understand that it's, we live in a broken and sinful world, but the idea that Satan has just he's stolen so much from us, right? And he's done so many horrific things. But this is the beauty, and I'm stepping into the post millennial. I've been hanging out with too many post mill folks. The optimism of
sure,
Jesus wins, and
right,
he wins here, and
right.
like that's the beauty of this, and we should embrace our masculinity to the point where we run in such a way to bring honor to women and to children and to the church. And so I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah, go
I
ahead.
think that's right. And I think women and children appreciate when men are, confident and competent, and get the job done. Like when those guys showed up with their chainsaws, I bet you nobody was out there checking to see what the percentage of women were in the crews.
Nope. Nope.
They were just like, we need this job done, and these
Yeah.
guys are strong and they can get it done, and go for it. And I think sometimes guys can be self-defeating when they fail to sort of appreciate the fact that women don't like being put down. Nobody likes to be
No.
put down. Uh, and sometimes you get guys who, in the way they talk about being a man, they seem to imply that. um, they have to kind of uh, sort of extol masculine virtues at the expense of women. And I
Yeah.
think that's just a tactical mistake. It's just stupid.
Yep.
Nobody wants to ever be told that they're worthless or that they
Amen.
have no place.
Nope.
So if we can do our job and just let it speak for itself, I think there's a great book, by the way, that addresses this. It's Matthew B. Crawford's Shop Class's Soulcraft.
Oh, wow.
And have you ever seen it or heard of it?
I've not. No.
He's a cool
But it makes
dude, man.
I like that title.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. So he's fascinating because his parents were hippies and academics. He grew up in Berkeley, and so I've got a little bit in common with him. My father was an academic, my mother was an artist. So I grew up in kind of the bohemian scene,
Yep. Yep.
and so he grew up in Berkeley and around all these tree huggers and stuff like that. And he rebelled, and he said, "What do you do when your parents are hippies and you want to rebel?" He said, "Well, you subscribe to Soldier of Fortune magazine and learn to work on cars." So that's what he did. But he became an electrician and and a motorcycle mechanic. And he went and eventually got his PhD in political philosophy from the University of Chicago, which is not too shabby.
Yeah.
And
No.
so he's kind of a a guy you can respect in a lot of different areas. But he said, you know, bragging is for boys.
Yeah.
A man just kind of does stuff.
Does it and
So,
moves on.
yeah, he just does stuff. So, like, he says, he fixes something and the lights work. What else needs to be said?
Yep.
So, if you're competent when it comes to working with your hands, you don't need to talk a lot. He said there's a kind of quiet confidence that men in the trades tend to have.
Yep. That's so my son, he was in college and he said, Dad, this isn't for me. I've been doing this for 2 years and I've got an opportunity to jump on with an electrician and
Right?
apprentice with him. What do you think? I said, man, you're almost 21 years old. What do you want to do with your life? He goes, I think I want to do this. And he's been doing it for a while now. He called me the other day. He said, Dad, I'm never going to have to work again. I said,
No, that's right.
what do you mean? He goes, I found, when they say you're
Sure.
doing something you love, you're never gonna have to
Right.
work again. He goes, I love this. This is
Yeah.
fantastic. I can't think of anything else I want to do. I was like, awesome. Good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. My second son is a welder and a foreman. He
Oh,
works for United Steel in Hartford, Connecticut. I went to school there. I went to college for a year and then said, yeah, this is not for me. And I'd talked to him about this kind of thing for some time, and I encouraged him to get into the trades, especially a dangerous trade. Dangerous
yeah.
trades are good to get into because other people will pay you to do stuff that they're afraid to do.
Yeah.
So he learned to weld, and now he's 27 years old, has two daughters, a house he owns, a wife,
Awesome.
and he's a foreman who oversees 30 men, most of whom are older than him.
Oh, wow. How fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Sweet. So you're a pastor. Talk
yeah.
about what do you see? What does the church need when it comes to men who are leading?
Yeah, well, I think that if you're comfortable with a wide range of men, that helps a lot. So I got a lot of blue collar guys, but I also have a lot of professionals, and I've got entrepreneurs and um, academic types in the churches I've served over the years. So the church I'm serving right now is growing rapidly. It's about doubled in the past couple of years in size, and lots of guys. But we also this is the thing about it. If you focus on the guys, the women and the children come too.
Amen.
So
Amen.
so
Say it
this is
again for the guys in the back. Say it again. Say it again.
if you focus on the women, you lose the guys. If you
Yep.
focus on the guys, the women and the children come too. This is something, believe it or not, I learned from Malcolm X. You
Oh,
remember
wow.
Malcolm X?
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
so he said the problem with the black church is what I just noted. They focus on the women and they lose the men. And
Yep.
he said, I'm going to focus on the men and I'll get the women and the children too. And I remember one time I was at the church of a friend of mine, a black pastor in Boston, and man, he had his choir come to sing at an event, and there was probably a 50 voice choir, 45 women and five guys, and I have my doubts about the guys, if you get my drift.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, um, but the Nation of Islam, the black Muslims that Malcolm X is known for being connected to,
Yep.
I've never seen them lacking interest by men. Now,
Yeah,
I'm not saying you need to become a black Muslim or do what they say,
I
but if
agree.
you if you
Nope.
if you're comfortable with guys and you can relate to a wide range of guys, and you can address them in ways that make sense, and they can connect to, then you'll be beating them away with a stick, man. It's not that tough.
Yeah, that's what I'm watching from, and that's what we're doing. I've been at our church for 5 years, and when we got there, it's a rural farming community that we're in. And when we first started, it was mostly older ladies,
Yeah,
and there's a few guys that were in there, right? And we've really pushed to try to get our guys in. We're getting more men, and as a result of that, our church is growing,
yeah,
and it's fascinating to watch. And I'm just, we need guys. We need
yeah.
guys that are as as a way, in a way that's just unleashed. We
Hmm.
don't need to constrain them and say, okay, you need to sit here, do this, do that. Just
Right.
unleash them on the community for the glory of God. And I'm telling you, there's going to be some amazing things that take place.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I've never had a woman in all the years I've been a pastor complain about how I approach this matter. In fact, most of the women would love to see their husbands more engaged,
Amen.
that I've come
I
across.
I am hearing that so many times in so many different places I go speak, or I go in places I'm at. They're like, I want my man to be involved. I want my husband to be doing, the spiritual leadership. And I'm telling you, if guys would do it, I think our whole culture would shift.
Yeah.
Really do. And supposedly there's a lot of Christians. It's a lot of guys that are Christians. If we just step into what God's created us to do and to be, I don't think we'd be dealing with half the junk that we're dealing with in our culture.
Yeah, I think that's right. Generally speaking, in the history of the world, when it comes to households, fathers played the role of kind of the guardian, the gatekeeper, and that meant,
Oh,
more than just physical threats. That meant all the threats, intellectual threats, um, temptation, that kind of thing. They were looking out for the interests of their daughters. They would intervene to make sure, because as guys, we know how the guys think, you know, and so that's one of the reasons why we can assess a young man
yeah. Oh
oftentimes
man.
better
Yeah,
than
no
our
doubt.
daughters can. We can say, no, that
100%.
that guy is not for you, babe. you
And
know,
and, I've, and we've had to do that before, and it's and
yeah.
it, we know what guys are thinking because we are one, right?
Right, right. Yeah. So it's that kind of intervention that I think that women and young women really appreciate. And if they know you're on their team and that you're trying to do the best to help them and to serve their own interests,
Yep.
they appreciate it.
Yep. It's so great, so wonderful. So do you still have books that are available? If somebody was interested in getting a hold
Sure.
of some of your books, where do they find your information?
Well, I mean, it depends. If you don't mind going to Amazon, they're easy to find.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, C.R. Wiley, they'll come up. I've got a book called The Household and the War for the Cosmos. That's probably what I'm best known for. And then there's Man of the House, which is, I think something you were maybe you didn't know you were referring to it, or you did, but
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
what I
book.
was referring to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that book. And then there's another book I wrote entitled In the House of Tom Bombadil, which if you're a Tolkien guy and you're into
Yeah.
that kind of thing, you're going to enjoy. And I've got some young adult stuff. And I'm working right now on about 4 books. I've got a young adult, this the sequel to the first book in my series that I'm just finishing up now. So if you got kids and they're interested in scary stuff, then I write that kind of stuff. And
Awesome.
then I'm working on a children's picture book. I'm also an illustrator. I've done a lot of, uh, you know, cartooning and stuff. And so I'm working on that. And then I'm working on a book on risk, why, taking good risks is necessary.
Yes. Oh man, we need to. There's so many where people are terrified to take risks, and
Yeah,
if we step out on the ledge, well, what if I fail? Well, you might,
right.
and then we need more voices telling us it's okay to fail.
Yeah, yeah, there's that. And there's no real accomplishment in life without risk taking.
That's right.
So I talked about that, and then the book that I'll hopefully finish up in time for Christmas for the Christmas market is a book on totalitarianism and
Oh,
responding to it.
good grief. Oh, yeah, we're close, but yeah,
That's
that
right.
yeah, I think that, I go back to this because people are like, well, what happens if Biden wins? And I'm like, Jesus is still on his throne, so I'm
Sure.
not concerned from that aspect. Um,
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's the right mindset. At the same time, it's good to be prepared and to kind of have some things that you've got working for you. So, the book Man of the House in part was intended to address that problem.
Sweet. Well, CR, I appreciate you taking time to come onto the
Yeah,
podcast and just to share your heart about the need for a return to biblical masculinity. And thank you for writing these books and putting this content out so that we as men have guideposts to try to get us to where we need to be. Genuinely appreciate you.
well, you're welcome, Caleb. It's been great to be with you.
Yep. Thank you so much.
All right.